Alright, so the brain rot has gone strong enough for me to make a whole video analysis on Kris from Deltarune. Great. So this video was originally supposed to be just on Kris, but while scripting I realized that when it comes to Kris and Spamton, there is a lot more ground to cover, so I guess I'm doing that now. Hope you enjoy my insane ramblings! I figured the best way to start this is with a specific detail that takes place when you first meet Spamton. So while Spamton is monologuing about his deal for Kris, the instant that he starts to get closer, Kris backs away. It's like Kris is scared of Spamton, or if they just don't want to be around him. And with that, it brings me to another similar point, one that happens much farther into the game, I must say, but it's while you're unlocking the Spamton Neo fight. This is probably my favorite detail of Kris's, like seriously. I've probably pointed this out to like 20 people while rambling. So in Spamton's shop, you get the dialogue option labeled Fear, and upon selecting it, Spamton asks what Kris is afraid of before getting cut off and spouting out this. Can anyone hear me? Help! Now, since it's Spamton's response, you think it's him calling for help, right? What if I told you that it's actually Kris calling for help? You wanna know why? It's because of what Spamton says afterwards. But it sounded like they were talking to you. The use of they proves that this is Kris, since to my knowledge they are one of the only ones to only use they them pronouns. If it was Spamton, then why not he was talking to you? And this helps me transition to an interesting point. Why is Kris so scared of Spamton? Well, my answer is that Kris isn't scared of Spamton himself, but rather the similarity they share. They're both metaphorically puppets with how Spamton was manipulated by Mike, but also Spamton is a literal puppet as well. That's his character design. The fact that Spamton is a puppet only reminds Kris that they're just like him, and that reasonably gets Kris uncomfortable since, if you were reminded of how your life is being taken over by someone else and you're forced to obey their every command, you'd be uncomfortable too. That similarity carries over to the secret boss battle, Spamton Neo. There's not much to note in the boss fight itself other than about two details that I'll cover now. Spamton refers to Kris as a heart on a chain, pointing out how Kris is being kept on a chain, which can refer to teetering. Teetering is usually used for animals, but I'm interpreting it to be the player keeping Kris restricted and unable to act out. After all, they hold so much power that Kris can't even stop them from committing suicide. Kris is the one to snap the last wire. Throughout the battle, we choose the option to snap wires up until there's only one left wire. After Spamton monologues, the wire snapped automatically, meaning that Kris went ahead and cut it on their own. Now that's all the details that take place during the fight, but what about before and after? After Spamton knocks Kris to the ground, they don't get up. They don't even get up as the soul is turning yellow and trying out its new ability. The only time that Kris gets up is when the fight begins, or when they're needed. Something about this tells me that they don't really want to fight Spamton, Now remember how I said that Kris is scared at the similarities between them and Spamton? That comes up in our next detail. After Spamton Neo, Susie asks if Kris is okay due to the observation of Kris getting goosebumps. We're given the option to either answer yes or no to Kris being okay. If we choose yes, then it's noted that Kris says it in a strained voice, but if we answer no, then Kris downright screams it, prompting both Susie and Ralsei to worry. What I believe this says is that Kris is scared of suffering the same fate as Spamton, because at the end of the Spamton Neo fight, after the last wire is cut, Spamton falls to the ground, lifeless. He has no master to control his actions, so he can't function. Kris knows that if they try to break away, they'll end up just like that. With how they move while the soul isn't in their body, how they're described as sleeping like a corpse when we're not there to control them, and how they have to put their soul back into their body. All of it points to them needing us to control them. But what does this have to do with Spamton? Well, I already talked about how the two are similar as in they're both puppets. Spamton happens to need someone in control as well, since you know what happens without that someone. So, seeing Spamton just die like that, and for him to say he can't be anything more than a puppet, with the already known similarity between him and Kris, it's no wonder why it left Kris so disturbed. They saw themselves in Spamton, and they saw themselves fall when so close to freedom. I must admit I had a lot of fun talking about this, seeing as I am obsessed with puppetry, imagery, and media. Unfortunately, all the ground has been covered. Presumably. Let me know if I missed anything, please. And that brings us to the end of the video. Thanks for watching!